Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the Be a Brilliant Human podcast or show, whichever way you'd like to put it. And it's episode 20. Can you believe it? My name is Joel Young, and today I'm doing something a bit different. Oh, first of all, welcome. If you've just found me, how wonderful that you're here. Make sure the first thing you do is to hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening to this wonderful podcast, so you make sure that you can get notifications of all the new episodes. And you regulars, you all know how much I love and appreciate your presence here and listening to these shows. Now, today we're doing something a bit different. I am doing a podcast takeover. So last month I was on the show called The Sovereign Human Show with the wonderful George Hardwick. He was interviewing me, and he's a great guy, George. He does amazing work. He's down in Cornwall. His show goes out on the sort of local radio station, all the podcast platforms, and it's also he records it live and does it as a Facebook Live, and I'll link in the show notes, which will be, of course, at beabrillianthuman.com/20. And it was a really wonderful interview. He's a great guy. So I thought, what the hell? I'll just put the whole interview on my podcast, and so have a kind of a takeover thing. So in this interview, really, he grills me on what is awakening, and it's a great sort of natural, informative interview where he just kind of asked me a couple of things we cover, just so you know what's coming up. We talk about what is grounded spirituality. We talk about the generational legacy and those waves of awakening. We talk about, obviously, awakening in general and how you can come to that point with the background shifts, and also about going to the next level of awakening. So without further ado, I must say to you, I heard something the other day, a complete aside here, as I'm thinking out loud. I listen to lots of podcasts regularly, and there's a podcast about podcasts, and the guy on there was saying that one of the best ways to get the word out, which obviously I would love to do, is ask your folks to just tell someone. So I thought, I must remember to do that. So if you like this show, please tell somebody about it. There we go, as well as subscribing and sharing and messaging me your feedback. Right, that's it for the little intro. I'm going to hand you over to the Sovereign Human Show. In the show notes, you will find timestamps if you want to clip through. It's about an hour long, this interview. So I put those in the show notes again, beabrillianthuman.com/20, and I will see you on the other side. Enjoy.
And we are recording now. Good. So, Joel, thank you so much for joining us. And for me, really excited about this evening, what we might explore. I've been listening to your podcast and absolutely loving it. For the listeners and the viewers out there, can you just let people know where they can find your podcast? What's its name?
It's Be a Brilliant Human is what you'll search for. It's the Be a Brilliant Human Show, but it comes up under Be a Brilliant Human.
And who doesn't want that? I mean, the marketer in me absolutely loves that. Brilliant. And when I listened to a few of your episodes, the thing that really struck me was, Joel's speaking different language, but he's talking about things I'm passionate about. So tonight, I am like a kid in a candy shop on some levels. I'm hoping to get some nuances, some new insights on the things that are most important to me in life. And thank you so much for taking the time. Let's start off with a sense of what is your work. If you were going to give the elevator pitch about what is Joel Young about, how would you describe your work?
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of changed recently. Mostly, I've been describing myself as the creator and custodian of MPA, which stands for non-personal awareness, and as a process. But I think part of the whole be a brilliant human thing is going beyond that. It really is about everything that I do. When I sat down, I thought, what is it that I really help people with, and what really matters to me? And that be a brilliant human bit embodies so much. So the human bit really is that I am such a humanist at heart. We're going to talk a lot about awakening today. I mean, I've done the whole awakening journey. I've done the sort of guru at the front of the room doing the satsang thing, gone into big, what they call non-dual.
You're looking at.
But fundamentally, it comes back to, at the coal face of human experience is our humanity. In a sense, it's our personality. I don't use the word ego. I mean, yes, all the other wonderful stuff's behind us, but it's like what happens at the coal face of humanity. And that's where things like kindness, usability, just simple things come in. So there's the sort of brilliance of talent, or the brilliance. There's so many different ways of sort of offering that word brilliance. And of course, you got be in there because that's about your being, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't market it. It just like it came out as like, yeah, that really nails it. But essentially, I help people to really come into themselves. And a lot of the people that I work with have done what they say is a lot of work on themselves. They've already done a lot of the awakening path. But what I've seen happen so much is you hit so much stuff where the medicine of spirituality becomes the poison. Because it divorces you from your humanity, and you get, every time you hit a roadblock, you start hearing things like, oh, I haven't dealt with my shit, or I have to go deeper, or I have to do a process of like a 5-hour process of introspection about it. And there's a space for all of that, but there comes a point where you have to go, where's the human in this? And when you bring the human back in, when you bring that just, the gritty stuff of, what do I really want? What am I about, with other people? Not this whole, they're the muggles because they're not awakened shit. It's like with people and with stuff, what I want, it grounds all of that stuff, all of the stuff, the widening stuff, and helps you to really become, sort of what I'm coming to now is like, become the rock star of your own life. You stand on your own stage and say, this is me, this is my song, this is what I'm here, I'm about. I'm able to say yes fully, no fully, and really connect. Mm-hmm. I don't have to wear a mask, although I can if it's fun, which means that I can be who shows up in the moment without any sense of hypocrisy, but because I'm always connected to what really matters to me in the middle.
Amazing. There's some, and I get Cherish teases me, so my partner and producer Cherish teases me so much for the use of the word nuance, but I'm unashamedly going to use it here, because some things I've heard you say there, you talked about, yes, it's important to have the widening, but what I really hear your work now focusing on is the grounding. And I wanted to share a little thing that came through as you said, I'm about helping people be the rock star of their own lives. And so it's almost, you are anchoring in, you are grounding through the rock, the brilliance of your light, the star. So the rock star is the grounded shiner of one's own light.
Nice.
And so thank you for that little definition that clearly wanted to be shared, because it's a key one, really is. I hear a lot of people talking about the importance today of, and I've said it on this show a number of times, grounding this awakening process, and whatever awakening may mean to you, in service, grounding it in service. It's almost, there are 100 different ways to awaken. You can go to the jungles of Amazon and do ayahuasca and all this stuff. But if all you're doing is drinking loads of ayahuasca and not using the fruits of that for something, for the good of people, for the good of planet, on some level, it's, I don't know, it misses something really profound, I feel. how have you found, and is that the thing? The people who come to you saying, I've done a lot of work and things, is the thing that's missing, is it the grounding or is it something else?
I think if I was to sum it up in a sentence, is that they kind of need permission just to be human again and not have to be like it. So in the way that I look at it so MPA stands for non-personal awareness. It's a philosophy and a practice, and it has within the philosophies, one of the core ones is wholeness. And the model that we use is I call it the multiple perspective models. I've been talking about it a lot this week because I've been talking about intentionality, and it's so key in there. But it really says that simultaneously we are a personality, a soul, and a being. Then there's the wider one, which is absent of experience and is irrelevant in terms of humanity anyway. But there's basically, it's more complex, but to simplify, it's those three parts. Mm-hmm. And what I find is, part of the spiritual awakening journey as it's been in the last 50 years is it tends to demonize the ego, what I now call the personality. That's why I don't call it the ego.
Yeah.
And promote onto a pedestal the soul perspective or the being perspective. But what that does, if you begin to identify at the level of the soul or the level of pure being, which is kind of that in the spiritual Olympics, that's kind of the enlightenment thing, right? Yeah. And try and make it a held state, then you already are beginning to separate yourself from that human part. And as you said, you languaged it beautifully when you turned a rock star into star and rock. Love that. But without it, you do miss the ground. And I think you have to take it in the context. I say there's no truth without context. And that the context is that we needed to drag ourselves out of the ego a bit within the context of the greater human consciousness, just to get some perspective on it. but we've kind of got that. I mean, there's enough of us on the planet to reach that tipping point where, like I see, like my daughter's 23 and her friends and my nephews and nieces all around that age. There's things that they just take for granted that people my age slaved their asses off to get.
Yes.
But that's on one hand, one part of me goes, that's annoying. I had to work for that. The other part of me is like, that's why we did it. That's why we went through all of those, intense processes. But I think we got to that point now where the planet is calling for quicker, simple ways just to more navigate the territory than try and sort of fix it and heal it and stuff. I mean, the healing is a natural outcome of it. And there's definitely still, obviously, people and context, but all of those things are necessary, vital, the kindest thing they can do. They need to go into those spaces because that's in their path is there. But working on a wider scale, it's like, how could all those people that are out there and kind of lost in the spirituality game and with best of intentions, but they haven't got a route back to themselves in their humanity. And that's what I'm about. That's what you can tell. It's like, that's what lights my fire. Yeah. And because I guess I've done it, got totally out there, and got the gifts from it. Exactly. I also, we both listen to each other's shows. So it's like, I love your show for the same reason. Because it's like, it embraces all of it. And I think that is the model forward. That's why wholeness is at the front and center of everything I do. It's like, you can allow the being perspective is like you get out in most situations, the perfection of the now. Hurrah. And the soul is the soul bit for me is because that word is really got so many meanings, for different people. But when I refer to it, I'm talking about the part of you that is all about, the journey, not the destination. It's about evolution. It doesn't really give a monkeys about the context. As long as you're evolving, it's happy. And all the poetry and everything else all comes out of the soul. You've got to be able to step back and go and look at the divine, beautiful, ridiculous madness of everything. Yeah. The deep sadness and the delight of it all, which is that soul will do that. It'll go, look at the suffering, that's amazing. Look at the growth, it's amazing. It will have a perspective. But you have to include that human part, which goes, I just want to design a T-shirt. That's all I really want. Yes. Or I just want to get the medal. Or I just want to get paid.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that creates the thing that's so vilified, which is the friction, the tension intention, that draws it into form, into matter. It's the stuff that matters at this level, so that you can really go, right, I'm here now, and all that stuff will shine through it if you've got it in place.
Absolutely. Love that. So this evening, there's a few things I really want to make sure we cover. One is what you spoke about there, intentionality. And I'm really curious to know how you view this process of grounding in our human action, thought, word, deed, the soul's vision. So I'd really like to explore how you support people with that. So that's a couple of definite things. There's something I've just got to come back to, though. I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, it was something along the lines of the healing happens of its own accord. And you were kind of referencing the planet there. And in these times of like Extinction Rebellion and that's not a statement to be glossed over. So please speak a bit more about that.
Yeah, good. That really, you got me on a soapbox then. That's really good. So I think I've got to come back to core principles really to explain that statement. So I'm sure I know, but as I'll say, everything is energy is kind of a concept that people are gripping onto. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics, whatever you call it, has been around now for like over 100 years. They're still teaching Newtonian physics in school. It's like, hello. But the principles of that, if you think about it, is that energy compels form. So you'll know that because you've probably seen those, and if you haven't, go Google it, those YouTube videos where they have a metal plate and they put sand on the metal plate, they attach a tone resonator and change the tone. Now the tone makes the sand dance around and create shapes. That's how you get oscillators, waves and stuff like that. If you change the tone, then the sand dances around and becomes a different form. Now, when you think about that, this is coming back to like deep non-personal awareness philosophy. But if you think about it, we are basically subject to energy beyond ourselves. There's a bigger energy. We can focus locally, but beyond us, there's the energy body of the human. And then there's the energy body of the planet and all the parts on it. And then the universe and God knows what else beyond. And all of it is singing in a tone, and the tone is compelling form. And what are we as we show up? And by form, I'm including thoughts, emotions, they're all energy. Yeah. So as the energy changes, the form changes. So we like to take everything personal to us. We say, I did that, I'm in charge of that. But the truth is, we're a consequence. Like Delamitri, we're always the last to know, really. It's like go with a grain of sand. It's got like, okay, I'm sat here. Oh yeah, I'm with the sand and I'm really cool. I'm sat in this position. And suddenly I go, hey, I've got an inspiration because someone's changed the tone. The whole plate is vibrating. I know, I'll go over there. Oh, I'm going over there. I'm going over there. Oh, I feel better now. I'm here. I did that. Did the sand do that? Or did the energy do that? Well, again, back to wholeness. It's kind of both, because I love a quote from Gandhi. Gandhi said, nothing you do will ever really matter, and it's very important that you do it. So it's like as that piece of sand needs to do what, sand, the analogy starts to break apart a bit here, but it's sort of the fact that the action of getting up and doing it is the experience. And that's what's important. So in one sense, we have no control over it, but we're part of the whole thing anyway. So we're in a place where as inspirations come, they are coming from a higher source. For good or for bad, it's very neutral, and as you get discerning about what comes in and what matters, then you can take action on it. So you can move. So in one sense, when I'm saying it's very important we take action, from the other side of the equation, I'm saying, well, you haven't really got a choice anyway, because you're going to do what you're going to do. Yep. But the paradoxes resolve themselves when you can really say, well, I can really honor the human experience of it. And in that, the point, even from a soul level, is to experience it, is to make choices, is to do those things. And so the different perspectives just give you like a gymnastic flexibility, because if you get stuck in those choices, or you get stuck in a situation, you can then move to a higher perspective and become free. Similarly, if you get lost out there, which is what really well why work is, out there in the wide perspectives, and end up with no boundaries and doing nothing and just saying, oh, it'll just happen for me, which is in the human world is an escapism of sorts or a lostness. Then coming back into the much more here and now perspective tends to give you more action.
Nice.
Did I explain that?
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And because it really allows me to get a deeper level of understanding, a deep embodied awareness of what I share on the show frequently, which is the flip of, we don't have a body that creates an energy field. We have an energy field that creates a body. Yeah. And when we extrapolate that out to the planet and to the collective level, actually, the more that each of us is doing our best to shift the tone, i.e. to shift the frequency of the energy being held collectively, then the planet itself, which is a giant mass of grains of sand, must, we hope, cohere in a different form. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Nice. So you spoke about there, your work involves people kind of getting lost out there. And I wonder if you have a take on this. My sense has been people say, oh, how come you're still hopeful? They tried it in the 60s and things. My answer is always, well, in the 60s, they didn't have almost any elders to stand on the shoulders of giants of. And you talk about your daughters and that, they do all this so quickly. And I say, well, we have those elders who lived through the 60s, saw it crash and burn, and can now share the gifts of that experience. So hopefully we can change it and create a different perspective. So what's been your experience around that? I'm curious to know how that lands with you.
I think the whole generational story is fascinating to me. I think I view it as like, again, energy is waves. Things tend to come in waves. You can see there was the 60s had an awakening, the 20s had an awakening wave. The 60s certainly had one. Then around the end of the 80s, early 90s, which is where I guess I got seriously into this stuff, was again another kind of wave of, it's like a push. You knock on the door and you get a bit further. And I think it's exactly the same. It's a complete, I hadn't thought about this till just now. It's a really good question. But it's like a mirror of what I see in personal development and spirituality and awakening itself. Is the idea is that, if you have a winter and a summer, then you've done something wrong. But you haven't, you just got seasons.
Yes.
It's like when people say that whole thing of, I thought I dealt with this shit, that I hear a lot. People, they wouldn't say they were lost, but that it's that thing of they got stuck. If you look at a tree that's been cut down, and you look at the rings of the tree, then they're all basically the same shape, aren't they? And then there's dark parts and there's light parts. So the dark parts are winter because the growth is a lot slower, and the light parts are summer where the expansion's happening. And now, if you're moving out of there, you're going to hit go on the light phase. Yay, we're all good and great guns. The world's coming together. And then you hit the winter, you hit the dark ring, and it's much denser. Yeah. You go, oh, we've all gone wrong. We've all, but you meet the edge in the same shape pretty much every time. Yeah. But it's not the same. So you might find that as you come to your edge in your personal awakening path, the flavor of that for you personally might be fear and avoidance. So then you get through that and you move wider, and then suddenly some big stuff happens and you go into fear and avoidance. Now, if you take a lot of the spiritual dogma or the personal growth dogma, which says if you dealt with your stuff, it would be eradicated. Then you go into that whole thing of, oh my God, I haven't done something right. I didn't look at my beliefs. Self-beration, which is counterproductive. Whereas if you say it's more like that, where you're just hitting it but at a wider level, it becomes actually, each time you hit that core stuff, it's just a signal that you're at an edge. Yeah. You're going to meet your edge pretty much with your personality flavor. And you, like anything else, you get, as you come into mastery, you meet things with more, you nuance the skills of working through it. But inevitably then you meet more challenges because we're growth seeking beings, and it would get very dull if we stayed on the first level of think of a video game. I can't think of one.
Yeah, exactly.
It would get boring.
Yeah.
So we don't. So I think in the same way, coming back to like the 60s and everything else, I think, it is that. And I like what you said in there, which again is really great, is you get to stand on the shoulders of the previous. Hence, again, my daughter and that we had, and their kids will grow up, God only knows with what awareness and awakening and expressions of that come in.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think with the generations, I always laugh because like my parents post-war were all about the stuff, we've got to feed our kids because they had rations, put a roof over their head, and that's really what matters. And we grow up, my generation, going, yes, but what about my feelings? Yes, of course I've got a roof over my head. Yes, of course I've got food on the table. Duh! But what about my heart, my feelings? You neglected me. And so we go off and do the journey of emotional awakening, discovering healthier relationships. And then our kids come along and they go, yeah, but you've wrecked the planet, you idiots, and what's going on? And and we're going, yes, but I've slaved so you can have an emotional life. Well, yeah, duh, of course emotions are okay. Of course I'm entitled to be taken care of. Of course I can be relationally open and and I can be who I am much more. And friends of my daughter were sort of coming out at 13, which was unheard of in my generation. They're like, duh, why wouldn't we? All that stuff's taken for granted.
Yeah.
And then they'll go on and do the next thing.
Nice. I've never quite seen it like that, and actually it starts to, well, at least give me maybe a little bit of forewarning about what my son and daughter might bring to my door when their time to kind of step in and claim their power is. So this concept of awakening, because it was in some of the episodes I listened to, it was a really frequent word that was used, and I don't know whether I just happened to tune into certain episodes where it got mentioned more. But I'd love to hear your take on on what you consider it to be, because for me, and I've said this a few times, working with a lot of young people who are having significant challenges, and actually we feel like it's the symptoms of neglect and trauma, and yes, very often that is going to be the case. But I also feel like sometimes it could well be the symptoms of kind of undiagnosed awakening and unsupported awakening, where the person and identity they thought they were building suddenly it is totally kind of dissolved or removed, or is in that process, and they are what is going on? So speak a bit about, please, your understanding of awakening as you see it.
So again, it's about a context. So I use it a lot in the term awakening, because a lot of people who have done a lot of personal growth, personal development, talk about themselves as they're awakened.
Right.
So, and that is like, again, I've used it, but I also rail against it, because again, that's part of the medicine becoming the poison.
Yeah. Here's the ceiling.
I kind of mentioned earlier, you get the Muggle syndrome, where, we're the awakened ones doing good work on the planet and all the rest of it, and you are the Muggles. You don't really understand, and we need to sort you out on that. That's the kind of dark side of it, really. But I think in the same way that, in the realm of, I've done a lot of work with healing and stuff like that, and you can do processes or healing work and heal physical symptoms or even emotional stuff. But lots of people just do that without thinking about it. It's just part of their life, and they just go over shit, basically. It's but in a real way. But I think if we come into the sort of more spiritual aspect of awakening, I think it's that point, and I think you said it there by yourself, where your identity gets challenged on some way. And the classic awakening path is normally it's through a crisis of some kind. Yeah. Because you set things up when you're a kid. Basically, you go, this is a rubbish situation. I have to invoke some survival strategy, which works for a while, but it's unsustainable because it's not in wholeness. And eventually reach a crisis point. And if in a way, if you suffer enough and are lucky enough to have some intervention, either internally or externally, you'll start asking questions. And when you start asking questions, you realize, although you wouldn't necessarily language it that way, that there's a witness inside of you. And the witness is going, I can recognize there's, again, those nuances, those discernments, those differences, and ultimately that there's a choice to do it differently. And then you're in a space where you can begin to explore what that is. So that, for me, is the essence of the awakening process. It's when you come into conscious self-reflection in a way that is likely to change you fundamentally, because that's what's being called for, in a way that means you can be more of yourself in some form, or at least more aligned with a healthier self. So while I don't demonize the ego or the personality, I do say polish your personality, sing with your soul, and bathe in your being. That's where you get to. But that awakening thing is, it is that kind of, okay, there's something more. But mostly it's referred to with a bit of a spiritual overlay, and that's where it gets slightly, has the potential, not always, of course, but has the potential to be, to slip into prejudice, basically.
And being real, I actually had some significant self-reflection as you were explaining that, realizing that, actually that has been me a bit more than I might like to admit. And I think the way it's played out for me, that kind of, the muggles, is at times of taking people for granted and of thinking I'm doing great work for the planet and therefore I should be financially well off and I deserve this money without actually doing anything to go out and really earn it. I sit here saying how much I love people, you know what I mean? And it's a bitter pill to sit with, to realize the extent to which that has played out for me. Even as I am very ready and able to spot it in others, to be like, the Tony Robbins crowd, they don't look at their shadows, all they do is want to expand all the time. They never go into the contraction, and here's me having my very own versions of that as well. So, thank you for sharing that. And
you're right. And just want to come in on that, because that's part of the deal. That's part of the humanity. You're never going to escape that. That's always going to be true. You're always going to be a hypocrite. If you want to get everyone is a hypocrite. You can't, it's because we're multifaceted, you can't escape it, and you're never done. So you're never perfect. So there's always something wrong. So if you're trying to make nothing wrong, good luck with that. Same as if, you want to eradicate your ego, good luck with that. You can't be here on this planet without one. So again, that's where I go back to kindness and non-judgment of it. And that a non-judgment doesn't mean you can't have a passionate, strong preference, which may piss people off.
Yeah, or hold strong boundaries if you
hold strong boundaries. Yeah, I mean that's part of that's how it all unfolds. Because that's one of the poisons, is that because I'm spiritual, now I'm going to demonize myself for being a shithead sometimes. Yeah. Because I should be better than that. I know better than that. I've got better tools for that. But the reality is, if you interrupt the process of just barfing up some ugly part of yourself, you don't get to see it anyway, because you're trying to hide it away in some form. And when you can go, oh yeah, bloody, that was rubbish, and you never spot it at the time. It's normally afterwards. Sometimes in the middle, if you're lucky. Yeah. But you can go, oh yeah, look at little old me, and my little self getting off on one in this way or that way, and it's okay. And I can be more, because I'm growing, I'll be more mindful of it, because my underlying intention is to be less of an arse, Yeah. But in that way, you can allow for it without going into, again, that self-oration. You can become much more, oh yeah, look at that. Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that really is a sign of, I don't know, I hope maturity, or I hope actually growing in sovereignty is that capacity to know that, I am both abuser and abused. And in both those situations, I love myself, Yeah. Good. So we've dealt with awakening. They're done. Sorted.
Until next time.
Yeah. Until the next layer, until the next wave.
Next layer, yeah.
But actually, I do want to say, what I really loved there was that you're always a hypocrite. That idea that you're always a hypocrite. It's and what struck me is it's almost the price we pay for incarnating, for getting to enjoy this incredible gift of a human body and crazy madness that you spoke about earlier. We've got to accept the paradox of we are going to be hypocritical. And can we love ourselves knowing that, in spite of that?
Yeah, and can we live it fully? You know, it's like, again, that's the shape. Those opposites are what create shape and form.
Yeah.
You need them. You need the light and the dark. You need, the shadow and the twilight even. You need all of it to paint the full colors of a human life. And most of the sort of people that we applaud as brilliant humans, they're pretty sketchy lives, really. Yeah. But they're letting that light come through at high wattage. But again, that makes big shadows, big light. And I think the only difference now is that we're coming to understand that you can, or I hope, a big part of what I'm beginning to offer is a way to, when you come into wholeness, you can have it all without the polarity and charge, but still have the action. You can still, there's starting to really emerge ways, and some of the stuff that is coming through me these days, it really gives you that frame where you can begin, at least for now, to get more of a sense of allowing it in wholeness and neutrality. And that neutrality gives you that frictionless state where movement can still happen. You think of a monorail, and it goes along where there's not so much friction required to generate things in that way. And again, as we move into the energetic mindset, the new world really of energy, it is much more fluid. It's not so solid. So it's kind of exciting times.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as how I've experienced what you described there is we're able to kind of hold it, this kind of the whole of who we are, the dark and the light, is there was a time where I'd be like trying to force everything, and I'd be really experiencing this tension of the opposites. And now it feels much more like there's kind of a core of me that's just holding it all gently. And sometimes that goes crazy and they turn back into fists. But actually, what I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years is just a kind of a gentleness at the core of my being that's in absolute craziness allows me to maintain a level of contentment that I almost thought I would never be able to experience. So, yeah.
I think that there is the kind of the gift of, the gift of the journey in a way. I think in terms of coming into mastery or nuances, what's available in the human consciousness right now, I think as you do all that stuff and you do begin to reflect and you hit that tipping point, I think I refer to it as the background shifts. It's like often when you start out, because you've built up all of the old strategies, you've thrown, on the scales of life, you've sort of thrown all the shit on this side. And so you go and do some light work of some kind. And in that moment, it's like throwing a bucket of sand on that side and it tips and you think, I've made it. And then it sort of falls back. But you get to a point where, it does tip over. So there's more in the light. And what that means in terms of your growth path is, like before, it's like moments of light amongst the darkness. And then the other way around, occasionally you're going to get some stress that goes on in, it'll do that. And that means that you might tip into the darkness, if to use those words. But there's a knowing inside that the balance always tips back to some kind of whatever that is, well-being, awakened maturity, calmness, whatever it is. And that's a whole different kind of paradigm to come from.
Nice. So this living in wholeness, what are for you some of the kind of core components of it? If someone was like, I feel like something needs to shift a bit, how might they know that you're the person that could really support them?
Well, anyone who feels kind of trapped and stuck, especially if it's in, again, especially if they've done a lot of work, or a lot of people that see me come in, they're in sort of they've already got some level of success on some level, but they hit a log jam. And again, like we've been describing, they know they sort of know what to do, but they're not doing it, or or what they're doing isn't working, or the old patterns haven't worked, that's where they normally show up on my door, and someone's told them about me, or they've listened to the podcast, or they've done something, and they don't even know why usually, but it's just like, I just need to reach out. Because, and then the way that I really help them is just by dropping the judgment and bringing them into neutrality, making where they are okay. I mean, I think it was episode 2 I did the sort of the growth path. So it's sort of, you have to have a discovery mindset. You have to start where you are. You have to be humble, because like you were saying, it's like, shit, actually I've got no clue right here, even though I'm supposed to know everything. And then you've got to go through the process of coming into who you are now. So I guess that's where they come in. So I mean, it's interesting. Always fascinates me. Lots of my clients are, people who've done a lot of awakening, maybe again other coaches and therapists, those kind of things. But I've got some people in the political field, people in the music industry, people in people in different walks of life. But they generally have that sense of I kind of think I ought to know what I'm doing, but this is really crap. Can you help me? That's kind of where it goes. And then with the programs and things, mostly like with MPA, I teach MPA as online programs for that. A lot of that is coaches and things, but people who want, it's fundamentally MPA is about not taking things personally. So people who are sensitive, empathetic, and trying to deal with what's going on around us, taking everything personally, which weighs you down. It's a simple way to stop taking things personally. But fundamentally, what they don't realize when they come in is it's about shifting your identity. It's about shifting who you are in the world. So that's kind of, that's a sense of what sort of who might be the person that says, yeah, that guy can do it. And I've also, just to blow my own trumpet for a second, because I'm allowed to,
of course,
because that's part of me.
Well, in what you've shared so far, you've earned the right.
I've been doing it 30 years, and I remember when I first started being the therapist in early days. I used to work with a lady called Brandon Bays, and she did a journey process and all that stuff. And early on, I would turn up, and I found it, and I'd come out of a music career, so I was like, we almost made it, but I found I was really good at it, because these things I didn't know it consciously, I couldn't articulate it, were embedded in me. So at the end of the seminar, all these people who'd come along, and no one could break them through. It was really about touching into your soul. They'd end up with me at the end of the day, and I'd get them through. And I think the only difference now is, well, I've got the experience behind me, but it's that I actually understand what the heck I'm doing, and I can share it. So when I teach people, this is what I'm doing now, is I'm sharing what I've come to understand is what was my own natural brilliance, which is why I chose this career, because I thought I really love it, and I loved helping people. I loved the transformation. I worked for years with lots of abuse cases. That was, I hear you in your work, and with people who are in really deep trauma, and to be able to be part of that, to be just part of that process where they go from this is how life is to there's another possibility and I can let it go, is phenomenal. So yeah, I'm banging on about it, but I love it for that reason. It's like, that's what it is. So yeah.
So in the time we have, there's a couple of things I want to touch on. One is this return to this dance between the soul and the human, the personality, and actually how we can bring those two into alignment. And I'm also curious about, they talk about the idea of the wounded healer. And so for you, I hear the passion you have for facilitating that transformation. And what would you say was some of your, if you'd be willing to share, what was perhaps some of the wounds that created the gift you can now give?
I think really good question. I definitely, for many years, identified with the wounded healer. Again, same as we talked about with awakening, shit stuff happens and all the rest of it. There's a number of things I guess I cite for it. I mean, a general sense of what I felt at the time was neglect, and these days it would probably be considered criminal, but was standard procedure in the 70s, for parents. I had a near-death experience when I was 5, nearly drowned, fell off a boat. That definitely has an impact. And I experienced some sexual abuse when I was about 7 to 9 as well. So those things, hence I ended up working with people who'd had a lot of sexual abuse. So those things were kind of core to it. And And also, it's funny you should mention that. I was thinking about that just before we came on. And I also tried to strangle myself on the way out of the womb because the thing got caught around my neck. So it was like, again, seriously? But I think all of that comes down to sort of, I think I came in from the wounded healer perspective with any sense of significance or power being taken away. I was like the invisible boy that's what I felt like anyway.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, paradoxically, of course, the minute I got a guitar in my hands at 8 years old, the minute the lights were on me, boom, it was there. So and that's why didn't give a monkeys about school because I was going to be a rock star. So I went and I did that to the best of my ability for a time.
Yeah.
I had a great time, mad time, mind-opening time with all sorts of substances and all the rest of it. But ultimately it was like finding that sense of the journey from invisibility, inconvenience and powerlessness to the power of really who you are really matters. And so I think those are the kind of the keystones of what it is.
Nice. And hearing that, you felt you came in with a kind of sense of like powerlessness, and now helping people to stand like a rock and to shine out and receive the significance they deserve. So beautiful to have those two elements present in what you just described and what you're now doing. So for those of us who perhaps resonate with what you've been saying, this dance of the human and the soul, and very much I know it for myself, there's these little nudges every now and then that just the soul will little gently, quietly whisper, come on, mate, you really should be doing this. And there's moments where I can see it all perfectly and how it's going to work, and know that if I spoke in this way, it would be the most persuasive thing and the vision would come to reality. And then the next day. So one of the things I've noticed in what you share is you talk about rocking intentions, not goals. So I wonder if you could map out, if I have kind of got it together accurately, what is the process of kind of aligning the human and the soul, and what role does intention play in it?
Well, so I've just literally the last 3 episodes of my podcast were sort of a mini training on it is rocking your 2020 intentions. And as I've said many times on there, I'm on a mission this year to sort of up-level how we approach intentions and goal setting. And the main thing is because I notice, and I have, because I've taught them over the years, 25 years of teaching it, playing with it, all the rest of it, that mostly the intentionality, the prayers, the goal setting, all of those, I lump them into one thing, right. It's all one thing. I'm missing the wholeness piece. So the way that I look at it, have we got time? I'll tell the story really quickly. Yeah. When I was 8 years old, my grandpa gave me a magnifying glass, a little one like a flick knife. It was like a little tiny one. And he showed me how you could light a fire with it. So the next day I hopped over the school fence, went into the field, and it was 1976. So I was like, it was a really dry year. You won't remember it, but
by here it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a drought year. And so I found a blade of golden grass, and I lined the magnifying glass up with the very clear sunny day that it was, and started a fire. So 8-year-old boy starts fire. Amazing. Now, that is the foundational metaphor of that training. But what it really says, and I'm going to give it to you 3 parts really quickly, but people can listen to the podcast and get it in full. First thing is that people make a mistake of is they don't realize it's energy first. Doesn't matter what intentions you set, anything else. If the stuff behind it, if the sponsoring energy is off, if that was a cloudy day, I would not have been able to start that fire.
Nice. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got to have the right what's behind it in place. Then you come to the magnifying glass. Now, if I'd hold it too far away, too close, if it was somehow cracked or something else, then it wouldn't have been able to take the energy of the sun and focus it to intensify it. So we are the magnifying glass in that analogy. And the thing that people do, they say, oh, yeah, I've got to focus. So I'm going to focus on my stuff, on this. I'm going to get really intentional and focused about this. But true focus, when it comes to us, is a matter of wholeness. You need to get in line and in agreement, all those gazillion parts of you, which if you break them down into being, soul, and personality and find common ground, then you're aligned up. Then as that sun comes through, it's going to get really intensified. And the final piece is the target. So people say, yeah, that's the stuff, right? It's the stuff. No, it's not the stuff. I didn't go in saying I need to create fire. I'm going to take my magnifying glass to the sun and look for fire so I can shine the fire. Did I do that? No, I didn't. What did I find? I didn't find a green piece of glass because grass because I might have singed it a bit, but I wouldn't have started a fire. I found a golden piece of grass that the sun had already had time with to get it ripe and ready so it could respond to that specific energy to create the fire I wanted. The final piece of the equation in my sort of 3-part system is that time is the substrate, and so in 2020 visions, the process that I'll be sharing could be used in any time slot, but time is the last thing because that's the petri dish in which things grow. But the thing is, it has to be ready and ripe. And because everything is energy, because a time block is a thing, you in relationship to it. So you have to sort out your issues with that time energy. You have to resolve a lot of the issues. That's what makes it ripe. So in the whole system, you've got to get the energy right, focus yourself up, target on something, in this case, the time that will do it. And then, as we said earlier on, the stuff will show up all by itself. It just has to. It's like it's there because you've got the right energy and the right target. And so that whole process. So and tomorrow's episode is going to be about how I can. I mean, there are stuff that people, if they listen to those 3 episodes, they're going to get a lot. There is practical stuff in there as well. But again, on Sunday, I'm doing a day. I'm going to record the day, and that'll go into a program as well. So, but I've just basically got all of the stuff there ready to help people to do it, to put into action. There's it's questions, there's the MPA process, there's the way to work, and what you'll come away with at the end of that is what I call a statement in wholeness. It's a statement that when you say it, when you own it, when you stand in it, it has all of those pieces in place. So then go to your vision board, go to your cosmic ordering, go to your law of attraction. You're coming from a place where everything is lined up, and that's when the magic happens.
Nice. So what lands as you say that is you have this kind of the wholeness statement is almost like the tone you are putting through the board that the sand is on.
Yes.
And so once you have that, then the magnificent shape of your life can start to unfold. And the board that the sand sits on is your vision board or your goal setting workshop or whatever it might be. But actually having that wholeness statement being the tone that can cohere the sand into the pattern you want. Nice.
And it's harmonic. And the thing about it is it resonates harmoniously with your personality, your soul, and your being, under which all of those disparate perspectives live. Because any different part of you is going to be born from one of those 3 parts fundamentally. That's the way it breaks down. And it's a bit like cogs. If you've got like these 3 parts of different cogs, if they're not connected, you're just spinning your wheels, which is what happens for the most part. You're just spinning your wheels. You lock them together, you've got a 3-cog system. Now that's power. That's what they're designed for. Working together, and so then that's the whole thing of up-leveling your intentions. It's not what you choose for your intention. It's that when you start shining light through that system, you're going to get pretty frigging discerning about what you focus on. Because you're going to, it's a bit like that guy. What was it? The Famous Four, I think it was, or something. The Fantastic Four. The guy takes his eyes off.
Oh yeah, and the X-Men. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah.
The X-Men. Yeah. It's like that. He doesn't take his
glasses off unless he knows exactly what
he knows it's like that.
Yeah.
Because he knows that once he does, shit's going to happen. Yeah. So
nice.
It's like that, really.
Amazing. So I love that metaphor in that story. Really, really beautiful. Really easy to grasp, and I have a sense deeply profound. You shared it in the course of 3.5 minutes, and yet what I can hear is that easily there's 3 or 4 hour-long podcasts, and it sounds like a full training, like a full day, where diving really deep into each element, into what is the sun, what is the magnifying glass, what is the grass, what is the time. So I really, therefore, if you are listening, encourage you to head over on iTunes podcasts, Anchor, all of those good.
All of those. You can also just go to beabrillianthuman.com. You'll find it with the show notes, and you can link through to whatever your podcast is. whatever your platform is. The show notes are there. And it's the three trainings, and then the day, really, the offer that is coming. Well, tomorrow's episode will be about it.
Yeah.
But it's basically, you can take that, you can figure it out, you can do so much with it. That's always my intention. If you want me to help you in a really structured way with the tools and resources that you can use for your 2020 visions, but also, if you've got like a big event coming up in 3 months, there's a time slot, you can work with it, so you get that piece of the equation. Or you can do it monthly. It's a really clearly defined process that layers one on top of the other, so that you can take that away. And of course, the gift of doing it in that way on a day is there's other people there, so you get to have, you always get that sense of the support of other people who are, you'll stand at the end of that day with your statement. And I've run this once before, a few years ago, just for fun, and it was like at the end of that day, they stood up and took it on, and they were like, "Oh my God, it feels it's me right there." And then they got the feedback from others. It was like it's the whole circle.
What a gift!
It's brilliant.
What a gift! Because there's something about witnessing someone standing in their wholeness, where we are beings of sound and light and frequency, where all of those things, the sound is, the form is solid and powerful, and the light is shining bright, and the tone that is created as a result is, it's like nothing else. It's like that person alone. So what a gift. Yeah, what a gift you give it.
Fantastic.
Joel, thank you so much for what you've shared. Is there anything else you want to share about where people can find you? Any final messages you'd like to offer?
Well, if you're curious about MPA and the whole thing, then just go to joelyoungmpa.com. In fact, most social media, I'm at joelyoungmpa. That's November Papa Alpha, in case people hear it wrong. And you can get the MPA process for free. You can just, whether you go to Be a Brilliant Human, it's all over the place.
Great.
Just click, send your email, I'll send you that out. And so you can play with the process. It all starts with the process. The process trains in the perspective, which is the non-personal perspective. And you can go as deep as you like, or just use it as a tool that, if you're taking shit personally, just go download it and just try it out. It's a bit wacky. It's crazy. It's like, it's a few simple lines, but the things I have seen with those few simple lines. joelyoungmpa.com, beabrillianthuman.com, and come say hello on social media. You'll find me with Joel Young MPA somehow.
Fantastic. Joel, thank you so much. And I think there's definitely going to be a part 2. I've heard you talk a lot this evening about bringing together all the different parts of yourselves, and that's language that's very familiar to me in some of the process work we do with the young men in crisis around the archetypes, the different kind of parts of ourselves there. So I'd love to have a part 2 where we explore parts, perhaps, and see what wholeness we can collectively create. So
yeah, I love that, and I love really, really love when I hear you talk about what you do too, and I can, again, like you said at the beginning, hear the resonance. You even called yourself the sovereign human, right? And it's like, I'm a brilliant human. So it's like, hello, brother.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I love it. Maybe they're 2 peas in a pod. To be brilliant, you need to be sovereign, and to be sovereign, you must be brilliant. So thank you, brother, for helping me this evening to explore and understand my brilliant further. Thank you.
Really appreciate you inviting me on, George. It's been great.
Pleasure. Go on, brother.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Thanks again to George for bringing me on as a guest on his show. You can find out about George at sovereignhuman.net. And again, I'll give you links to his Facebook stream where you can see the lives. He goes out every Monday night at 9:30. Otherwise, have a great rest of this week. Next week, I'm quite excited about next week. We're going to back to me, and I'm going to be talking about the anatomy of the dark night of the soul. So get yourself ready for that. I will see you there, same time, next Tuesday for episode 21. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe, tell someone, leave me a message, give me a review, and have a wonderful time being a brilliant human. With all that remains then is to, as you know, if you're a regular listener, cue the moo.